Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of the Huddle Up podcast. I'm Hunter, joined by Tulip and Vince, and it's been a while. We've taken a week in between episodes 2 and 3 to just really gather more information for you guys because we're kind of in a dry season of sports. We have a lot upcoming, though, so we're going to roll into that now. We're going to talk about a look ahead at March Madness, one of the most highly anticipated tournaments and playoff in all of sports. So before we do, it's been a while, so how are we all feeling tonight?
Doing good, doing good. Been a good past week.
I'm good. It's been a long break. Glad to be back.
Yeah, so we're going to roll in here. We're going to take a look first. Atulith, I'm going to hand this off to you to look at our potential 1-2 seeds, so just the general best teams in the country so far.
Yeah, our potential one seeds right now are definitely Duke, Auburn, Florida, Alabama, Houston, Tennessee, Texas Tech, Iowa State, and Michigan State. Personally, I think Duke and Auburn definitely have these two seeds, like the top two one seeds locked down. They're going to be the one seeds in their regions. And the way Florida's been playing this season, they've had great games. They've been staying atop the AP poll the entire season. They've been great. I think they're also going to get a one seed. And just a few hours ago, Tennessee beat Alabama on a crazy buzzer beater. We're in March, and I think Tennessee's going to get that fourth one seed.
Yeah, you take a look at some of the top of the pack teams. You look at Duke and Auburn, obvious locks. Florida, a really good team. Their win over Auburn was extremely impressive. Tennessee, like you just said, their win over Alabama at the buzzer, extremely impressive. And a team like Houston, who's been a steady top of the poll, sort of contender the whole year. Right now, they sit at 4 as we're recording this. And they are a very impressive team, and they're always fun to watch in March. Like, even last year, guys like Jamal Shed on their team. It's going to be interesting to see Houston in March Madness again due to just how impressive they've continued to be.
Yeah, I mean, right now, you have teams like Duke and Houston. In my opinion, they seem like they have the strongest cases for the number one seed, especially, considering how they've been throughout the year. But I wouldn't sleep on teams like Texas Tech and Auburn, just because they've been steadily improving. And I feel like if they finish strong, wouldn't be surprised if they snuck into that top spot because I do feel that we could see a little shakeup in the final week.
Yeah, as we're recording this, it's Saturday, March 1st. Conference tournaments or just overall regular season play ends on the 9th. So a week from the day this video will be uploaded. And then the week after that, it's going to be Selection Sunday. So conference tournaments are very fast. And you only got a certain amount of teams that are able to guarantee themselves a chance at really getting a shot at March Madness. And definitely fun to watch conference tournaments and that just lead into March. It shows really the chaos that stuff like this so late in the season can cause. You look at a team like NC State last year. They won every game to clinch their shot in the March Madness tournament. They won every game in the ACC tournament. And they carried that momentum all the way through. They won so many games in a row just off the pure heart that they had. And teams like that are so fun to just watch pull off runs. Speaking of that, do we think that middle of the pack teams will have a fair chance this year considering how good the landscape of college basketball has been?
Yeah, the Lance, a lot of teams in the top 25 have been great. Like, a lot of 20-win teams. And, I haven't seen, a strong, any of the teams, in the top 25, you can make a case for them to be a top 3, 4 seed. And some of them are going to be 5 seeds, which just sucks. But for the middle of the pack teams, definitely this could be a 3 or 4 seed, depending on their conference championships go. But Wisconsin could definitely make a run. Wisconsin, Clemson, and Michigan are my 3 teams, which will be around the 3, 4, maybe even 5 seeds that could definitely make a run in this tournament.
Yeah, you look at
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, I got it. I mean, when we're talking about middle of the pack teams, I think absolutely. I mean, we've seen this happen before. A team that is ranked from the 6 to 11 range that could definitely go on a run. you know, Especially how unpredictable March Madness is. Let's just say a team like Iowa State or even someone like Brighton, for example, could catch fire, at the right moment. And just with the right matchups in play, they could possibly, the two teams that I made as an example, they could make a deep run. They only just need a few games to go your way. in the Final Four, and you're set.
Yeah, definitely. You see a lot of these teams get picked a lot by the public, and they get first rounded. So many 11/6 upsets happen in March. There's a very high percentage that actually do happen per year. That it's so hard to really predict how these teams will fare. You obviously want to pick upsets, but at the same time, some schools just aren't built for big wins. And you might even think that. You look at a team like FDU. Does anyone here think that going into March Madness that one year they would have beaten Purdue? That's what makes March Madness so fun. It's not like other sports playoffs where there's just a certain number of the best teams make it. There is some middle of the pack mediocre teams that make it due to how much heart they have when they're playing in their conference tournaments. They really want this shot, and proving it just boosts everything on their team, which leads them to these Cinderella runs. Some other teams we have here. Do we think that UConn, with where they're at right now, have a legitimate chance to actually go for a three-peat?
I personally don't think UConn will three-peat considering how strong. Like, I think there's teams who are stronger this year than UConn, but at the end of the day, like, any playoffs just comes down, in my opinion, to defense and coaching. And UConn have a huge advantage in coaching with Dan Hurley. And with the help, we haven't seen a healthy UConn team that much. Like, if we get a healthy UConn team and come March Madness time, then like I could see them definitely make a run. But like if they're still like dealing with some minor injuries, then I don't see. I could see them maybe winning first two rounds and maybe getting Sweet 16. But that's the max I could see UConn doing with all the injuries they've dealt with this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's no secret that UConn has been dominant for a very long time, but I'm not so sure they have what it takes to make it a three-peat. It's going to be a tough road. And I think, this field, especially if competition is going to be much deeper than it was these past 3 years, like the rises of teams like Duke and Alabama. UConn's a strong team, that's for sure. But in a tournament like this, especially this year, and this, how fierce the competition is, anything can happen.
Yeah, with a school like UConn, they just lost 4 out of their 5 starters to the NBA. They lost Stephon Castle, Tristan Newton, Cam Spencer, and Donovan Clingan. That was their heart last year in the tournament, and it really has been like Tristan Newton, Adama Sonogo, players like that they've lost throughout the past few years were the real heart of the team when they went back to back. This team is still good at basketball. They are coached by Dan Hurley. They're obvious. Everybody knew that they would be good. I'm not sure people were expecting them to be what they are. Do I think their record shows the overall talent that they have? I mean, they're 20-9. They are very deserving of a 20-win season. Can they beat a team like Marquette and Creighton? Absolutely, they've done it already. But with UConn, I feel like Sweet 16, Elite 8, somewhere around that range is where they'll go, and that really hurts to say as a UConn fan. But I feel like at some point the momentum's going to change with this team. They've won 10 games in a row in March Madness by double digits. That's very hard to sustain, especially with how different their roster is now. I just don't know how UConn will be able to find like similar success to they have the past 2 years. Another team in the Big East we're going to look at here, St. John's. They have been very steady throughout the whole season. Natulith, I know you really like St. John's this year. How do you think they will fare come tournament time?
Like you just said, like I'm really high on St. John's. They're a great team. Their defense is stellar. Like they've held off UConn. Like they played great in conference play. They played great this season in general. They're just really overlooked. Like we didn't even include them in the potential one seeds, but we included teams like Texas Tech. But they're just really overlooked. And the only thing I see that could stop them is if they find a team, if they face a team, like it could be first round or second round, even if it's a lower seed team, if it's a team that can shoot the lights out. Give them a team that can shoot the lights out, and I'm going to have to pick them over St. John's.
Yeah, honestly, I think they're a little bit overrated, to be honest. They've had a solid season. I'm not sure that they have, the overall depth and talent that these other teams do to make a real March Madness run, Cinderella run. Now, I could see them maybe winning a game or two, but I think they'll fall off once it hits harder competition. And I think their run will probably be shorter than you or we all might expect.
Yeah, with St. John's, they're shooting 30% from the 3-point line this year. That is not going to really help you in March. shooting 30% from the field in March is not going to help you. You look at a team like Oakland last year. They shot lights out from the 3 and they were able to upset Kentucky. Teams that have tough time shooting usually don't fare well in this tournament. So for St. John's, the key to success in my eyes at least is shoot the ball as well as you possibly can. I get that's something that you could say for every team, but at least for St. John's, they've shot 45% from the field, which is solid, pretty good. But 30% from the 3 is not really going to get you where you want to be as a team like St. John's in a run in March Madness. We take a look at teams like Duke and Alabama, who really are confusing teams because, like we've said, Duke has had losses where they've struggled. I wouldn't say struggled. Like their loss to Clemson, a lot of people are not going to expect an unranked team like Clemson. Duke really hasn't beaten many ranked schools. I believe they've only played out of teams that are currently ranked. I think only they've played 6, and they're 3-3 against those teams. I could be mistaken there, but a team like Duke could scare or ruin a lot of brackets because there is so much worry as to can they beat good competition. That same, I'm not gonna say same goes with Alabama because they play in the SEC, which this year has been a really good conference compared to like the ACC. But both these schools are very concerning because they could really lose to good competition. Atulith, what do you think as a Duke fan?
I'm gonna be as unbiased as I can with this. We definitely have the talent. Like we have great talent, but the thing is, we're young. We're young. Everything about this team is young. Like our coach is young. John Shire's very young. Our star player, our number one player, our number one scorer, Cooper Flagg. He's a freshman. Our second highest scorer, Con Newpel. He's a freshman. We just roll. We have freshmen. We're young. They have no tournament experience. The only player who I really see who has tournament experience on this Duke squad is Tyrese Proctor. I'm high on Duke because of the talent, but talent can only lead you so far when you don't have experience. Talent-wise, I could definitely see us making a championship. I could definitely see that. Like when you put in the experience, I could see at max this Duke team making a Final Four Elite 8 run, but that's about it.
Yeah, point you made. Cooper Flagg freshman and Con Kneppel freshman. Donovan Kling was a sophomore for UConn, and their first run he was a freshman. Stephon Castle also a freshman. Their two really big pieces were young players. So what people really underestimate is how freshmen can perform in this. Usually with March Madness, it's these very older seniors for these smaller schools that really pop off. But there has been a lot of good freshmen in terms of March Madness success. And I just wouldn't know if I would take that into too heavy of consideration for Duke. Obviously, experience is something. But Duke has scored triple digits in plenty of games this year. Why can't their chemistry take them far enough? I'm not sure if Duke is going to be a team that could win the national championship, but I would not sleep on Duke at all and ever. Not just this year, ever. I just wouldn't.
Yeah, definitely. I think teams like Duke and Alabama, they have the talent, especially the coaching, and I also think the experience to go far in this tournament. I mean, Duke's always been, a tough out, and Alabama has shown us that they can compete with anybody. I mean, they both have the pieces to make it to the Final Four and potentially win it all if they could play up to their potential standard. I think they're both very deep teams roster-wise with playmakers around. So I'd say, yeah, they're definitely in the conversation for a deep March Madness run.
Yeah, you look at a team like Alabama. They made the Final Four last year, and they lost to UConn. Mark Sears, great player. The thing with Alabama is they've done really good with SEC competition. You take a look at some of these teams that they've beat really good teams. I can't really say the same for Duke, which worries me, but like I said before, I'm not worried about Duke succeeding in March Madness. It's gonna happen historically. That's just how it is. Last,
Real quick, tying back to what you said about UConn, like their young players like Klingen and Castle, like being great for them, like their young players being great for them, like that also, like I said, ties back to coaching, and you cannot like.
yeah,
Obviously, I'm not gonna be biased about this. You can't compare John Shire to Dan Hurley. Not even close.
no.
Like Dan Hurley definitely plays a big factor in why his young players are performing that well. And I think you need a coach like that or like at that level in order to have your young players perform at a high level in the tournament. And Duke doesn't have that high level of coaching compared to like Dan Hurley level.
Yeah, one last team we're really going to point out here is Kentucky. Got first rounded last year by Oakland. Historically in March Madness, they either go really far or they go out in the first two rounds. What do we see for Kentucky this year?
One and done.
That's it.
Never betting on Kentucky. No, I'm done with dude. I had him going to Elite Eight or something last year. I was so high on him. I'm done with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kentucky, regardless of the situation, I think they're always going to have high expectations as you did last year. But yeah, I'm just not totally sold on them this year. You know, I think they underperformed a bit. And while they do have the talent, they just lack the consistency that these other top teams had or have. I feel like if they can get their act together and play up to their potential standard, I think they can make a run. But this is all hypothetical, and I also just think that this could be another season where they just fall short of what they want to.
Yeah, I'm also one of those people that picked Oakland last year strictly because Kentucky does not have success in March. We'll breeze through these really quick. We're just going to look at a couple contending teams in each power conference. Let's start with the Big East, the Tulip. Who are our contenders in the Big East to go far?
We have St. John's, Creighton, Marquette, UConn, Xavier, and Villanova this year.
Yeah, a team we haven't really talked about is Marquette. They've been steady in the AP polls. They've been very hot in the Big East this year. They've maintained that 2 or 3 spot. So has Creighton. Creighton's been in that 2 or 3 spot. I don't know. I'm pretty sure they've been ranked this year. Those two schools don't really have much to show for in terms of success in March because of how small the sample size is for those teams. But I like a team like Marquette. I like a team like Creighton. Why can't some of the March Madness is completely up for grabs every single year. It's very difficult to predict. But yeah, some Big East might be one of the best conferences, if not the best conference in all college basketball. But yeah, definitely a conference to look out for in terms of who can produce a winner.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking sleeper teams, yeah, I'm keeping an eye on Xavier from the Big East. I feel like they're not getting as much attention as UConn or Marquette. I feel like they've been solid. They have a lot of experience. Out of the SEC, I don't know where gauge it, but the SEC, I think Florida could also make some noise if they get hot at the right time. I feel like they're just flying under the radar, and they have potential to be the somewhat surprise of this tournament, like some teams always do, because it's March Madness.
Yeah, picking up what you said about the SEC. Teams in the SEC have been on the top of the polls all year. Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, even Texas A&M and Missouri and Kentucky. Those are all ranked schools right now. Missouri lost today to Vanderbilt, which is not good for showing how much respect you deserve. But these are all ranked teams. This is a very talented group of 6 going into a conference tournament. We actually have 7 here, so I believe I'm not sure how many go in the conference tournament, but this is a very strong group of 7 teams that are all ranked, and that's definitely something you could take into consideration for.
Yeah, tying back to what Vince said about Big East, I like what you said about Xavier being a sleeper. It's just the only thing that worries me is how they play when they're not at home. Like, they've been great this year at home. Really good at home this year, but when you go to like their away, they've been bad this year away. I think they're like 4-7 away. Not a big fan of that.
Yeah. While Tulip gets his technical difficulties figured out, we're gonna look at the ACC teams like Duke, Clemson, Louisville, Wake Forest, UNC, even. How do we see these teams in the ACC finding success? Especially you look at UNC. They were the number 1 preseason seed 2 years ago, and they didn't even make the tournament. UNC definitely not as good as they have been. I'm pretty sure RJ Davis is still on their team now.
Yeah.
RJ Davis definitely a good player. But yeah, ACC. What do you think?
ACC this year. Really
That's why I haven't even paid attention to the ACC that much.
I mean, you obviously look at schools like Duke, Clemson. They've been ranked. with the ACC, I'm not really sure some of these schools are really good. We just I'd say Duke is probably going to run away with this conference. I don't think we're going to see another team like NC State do good. That's really once in a 10-year span thing. But we'll cut off ACC. We'll look at the Big Ten here with a lot of good schools that we've been talking about. Michigan State, and Wisconsin leading the pack in the Big Ten. Sulith, what do you think about the Big Ten's chances of producing a champion?
Big Ten, I could see it. Like I said, Michigan is definitely one of the sleeper teams I have this year, considering how they've been playing. Michigan State, always great in the tournament. It's so fun to watch Michigan State in the tournament.
With Tom Izzo.
Wisconsin, another sleeper team, I've said. And I could see either of those three. Those three are great basketball teams this year. All of them are ranked inside the top 15, I think they're all ranked top 12. Great teams this year. Either of them can make a run.
Yeah. I have my eyes set on Michigan State. As you said earlier, they're a very fun team to watch, and I like watching fun teams. So I'm very excited to see them. If they even make the tournament, hopefully they do. But yeah, I mean, I could see them running away with this. Possibly. That kind of hesitant, but I feel like I can, you know, talk myself into it.
Yeah, with Big Ten, Michigan State, very well coached team, like Atul said. Well coached teams do good. Tom Izzo is a very good and experienced coach, and him leading Michigan State is definitely going to help them. Last conference we're going to look at here is the Big 12, with schools like Arizona, Texas Tech, Iowa State, and Houston, who really round out the top of that conference. Vince, what do you think about a school like Iowa State that you've already talked about, or a team like Texas Tech that could have a chance to make a run this year?
Yeah, I mean, we already talked about Iowa, I believe. I think I had them. Pretty sure I had them in the middle of the pack teams that I could have winning it all. Just because, I mean, if they start winning at the exact right moment, as I said earlier, with the right matchups in place, I feel like they can make a deep run. Both those teams.
Yeah, I honestly like the Big 12 this year. I've always been I've always loved watching Houston in March. They're a great team to watch in March. Arizona on the borderline of top 20. Like, there's a lot of the Big 12. Five teams in the Big 12. I'm pretty sure in the top 25. Houston, Arizona, Texas Tech, Iowa State, and BYU. Honestly, watch out for BYU. They've been hot recently. 5-game win streak, just snuck into the top 25. Going to be like a 5, maybe 6 seed, depending on how their conference tournaments go. But I could see either 5 of those teams I just said make a pretty solid run this year.
Yeah, really with March Madness, they don't even have to come from one of these 5 conferences. We could see a winner come from a conference that's not this, but this is just usually where the winner's going to come from. I mean, usually a good enough team is going to win March Madness. It's very difficult to see a double-digit seed winning, especially with how talented the field of college basketball is this year. But this is going to be a fun year to watch March Madness. There's a lot of good teams, but how are those good teams going to fare? Next year, we're going to roll into segment 2. We're going to take a look at how injuries have impacted the overall landscape of the NBA this season. We'll see you there. All right, guys, we're going to roll into segment 2 here. We're going to talk about how injuries have impacted the NBA. We just saw Victor Wembanyama. He's done for the season. Same with Joel Embiid, but we're going to talk more about Victor Wembanyama here because of the rarity of his injury. He has a blood clot in his right shoulder, and blood clots have ruined careers of so many athletes, notably in the NBA, Chris Bosh. I mean, blood clots ruined his career. I mean, blood clots were towards the end of Bosch's career, but still. You look at a guy like Wembanyama, he's so young, and he's been so good all year. Now he's just done for the year just like that with blood clots. Vince, how do you think this can impact his career as a whole?
Yeah, it's a huge blow to Wembanyama, no doubt. We've just seen how blood clots can be really, detrimental. Looking at, Chris Bosh's career, for example, it's tough to say what this will mean, long term. But I'd be worried about the potential, for if this injury was reoccurring possibly. But for now, I don't think his career is derailed entirely, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on, and hopefully it doesn't affect his future future ability to perform at a high level because he could possibly be the face of the NBA the way he's been playing.
I don't want to be negative here or anything, so I'm gonna I obviously would not want anything to happen to any player, especially Wembenyama, something like this, a career-ending injury so early. But I really hope he recovers from this, and it's definitely dangerous. But I'm gonna stay on the positive side and definitely think that he's gonna come back from this. I don't know if he's gonna stay the same, but if I hope he recovers.
Yeah, with Wemby, like the Spurs are centered around him. Not even just the NBA. The Spurs are centered around Wembanyama. They built around Wembanyama. They got guards like Stephon Castle and Chris Paul, so they could play make and get Wembanyama going for the future. I mean, this sucks for Wembanyama. Blood clot in your shoulder. You need your shoulder to be efficient, to be a big man, to play in the post, to shoot even. You need to be as healthy as possible in terms of just your body health as a whole. Recovering from this is going to be difficult. He might not be back to start next season. You never know how long this is going to take to fully recover from. With a team like this, I don't want to see them rush him back because that's going to really hurt his career if they try and rush him back. Yeah, from here, the Spurs, I mean, you look at the lottery odds right now. The Spurs also have the Hawks first round pick, I saw. And they're right now in trajectory to pick number 1 and number 2 in the draft. How crazy would that be? You have a player like Stephon Castle and Wembanyama, two young stars, and you can add pick number 1 and number 2 in this year's NBA draft to Tulith.
I would like that. They have a young team. Apart from Castle, Wembenyama, and apart from Castle and Wembenyama, you also have a star veteran, not a star veteran, but a pretty solid veteran in Chris Paul. You also have De'Aaron Fox. So you're very solid at guard, and I think they should go for maybe a 4. They have a lot of guards, a lot of guard depth. Chris Paul's getting old, sure, and he might retire. So, but you still have two other star guards. I would go for 3 and 4 at these number 1 and 2 picks if they get them, and their starting lineup could look like, honestly, it could just look like Fox, maybe Paul, Fox, the 3 they draft, the 4 they draft, Wemby and Chris Paul maybe coming off the bench, or a good rotation of guards.
You heard it here, Spurs. Pick Cooper Flag and Joni Broom with a number 1 and 2 pick to get a 3 and a 4.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I could honestly see that.
Another guy you left out at Tulith was Stephon Castle.
No, I said Castle was starting
sorry.
over. Yeah, Castle at the 1 probably, and Paul coming off the bench.
Yeah, I think the Spurs, they're in somewhat of a tricky spot, without Wembanyama, they still have solid pieces, as you said, with Chris Paul and Fox, but they were really counting on him to be the cornerstone of their rebuild. But that being said, they now have the best chance, to land a top pick in this draft. So they're going to have to shift their focus towards the future and just continue their rebuild just around that. And this draft lottery is very pivotal for their future, and it could be their best shot, at staying competitive sooner rather than later.
Yeah, you take a look at a guy like Wembanyama. He was the favorite on all betting sites to be the defensive player of the year, and now he's done for the year because he doesn't qualify. That's another thing we're going to talk about later. The qualification limit. You need to play 65 games. He's not going to be able to get those 65 games in now. Averaging almost 4 blocks a game. That's incredible for a young player like Wembanyama to average 4 blocks a game, and winning Defensive Player of the Year so early into his career could really help really show how good of a player that he could be. But teams like this have been shown to really be able to bounce back, and you would love to see a guy like Wembanyama bounce back. Don't get me wrong. Love Wembanyama as a player. I can't wait to see him fully healthy back on the court, but it's going to take some time. Like I said, we're going to look at here. We're going to take a look at other star players who are ineligible for awards. Atula, do you think the 65 minimum game threshold is bad for the league?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of great players who maybe they might not fully win the award. Not Wemby, who was running away with the defensive player, but I think that 65-game limit should be definitely decreased because that's what 80% of the games. Injuries happen. It's a long game. It's an 82-game season. Injuries can happen, and you can't expect a player sure most valuable player they play they're there for the team like I feel like 65 is too much. They got to decrease that to like probably mid 50s. Not even like too much of a decrease. Probably like maybe a 5 to 10 game decrease would be good.
Yeah, I think the 65 game minimum, I think it has its positives and negatives. On one hand, it's fair the players are put into the full season who play the full season. But on the other hand, if players like Joel Embiid, who's been injured for his entire career basically, or let's just say Luka Doncic gets hurt and miss a few games, it just kind of feels like their award chances are just unfairly impacted. And it's just a rough and hard situation that I think the league should look into. Just that how the injuries are treated, in terms of these players being eligible to play, just for these awards. And I just feel it's a little harsh on the stars who just miss these games for reasons that are just completely out of their control.
Yeah, I wanted to update something really quick that we were talking about earlier. Right now, the Spurs have the top odds to land pick number 7 and pick number 8, but with the lottery, it really is hard to tell. But yeah, back to what we were saying. 65 games minimum. That's you can't even miss 20 games. Like some people will have even ankle injuries that will hold them out for 6 games, and then you're even toning down your threshold even more. Um, and a lot of teams rest their stars now. It's not really fair to them, and it's not really their choice either if they're going to be able to rest or be out via coach's decision. I think 55 to like 57 games would be a more reasonable spot to put this minimum. But like you look at guys like Luka, you look at guys like Embiid and LaMelo, who throughout their career, or at least this season for LaMelo, has been really good. Luka and Embiid throughout their whole careers have been very solid, but staying on the court definitely a problem for guys like that. And it just sucks that these people can't really have anything to show for it just because they're injured for 17 games. Um, do we think like some of these guys, like you look at a guy like Kawhi, Paul George, Paolo, Kristaps, Zion, Chet Holmgren, Jimmy Butler, guys like this who have also lost their shot at winning awards, not even just MVP as a whole, just all awards, I think, are impacted by this. Like Wembanyama was a lock for Defensive Player of the Year. He misses 17 games and he's done. It's just ridiculous in my opinion. Like with a sport, I don't even know. Well, the NBA should obviously have a minimum, but like imagine like a sport like the NFL doing this. Like say a player misses the last 4 weeks and then they're completely ineligible to win an award because of that. Like it just doesn't really seem fair to some of these players because injuries aren't even in their control.
Yeah, they would be eligible. It's just they wouldn't be quite in consideration as the other players that would have played the full season. Yeah, no, I agree with you for sure. Um, it doesn't really make sense that if a player like, let's just say, Jimmy Butler misses some time and then can't win an award due to that reason, again, it may be out of their control. Um, but yeah, no, I agree with you on how the NBA should take action on it.
You have anything to Tulith, or are we good?
I completely agree with all of that. I think the threshold should be decreased.
All right.
How many games? How many games do you think it should decrease to? Like
Probably the mid 50s, like around 100, like 57. I was thinking 55, close enough.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to roll in here to our next segment. We're going to look at the NFL Combine, but before that, we're actually going to get you guys with a little bit of breaking news that actually happened just a couple hours before we're recording this show. We'll see you there. We're going to talk about the trade that we were talking about. Deebo Samuel has been traded to the Washington Commanders, paired up with Rookie of the Year Jaden Daniels for a 5th-round pick. Vince, what do you make of how these good players have been traded for such little value, like a 5th-round pick?
Yeah, to answer your question there, I think it has to do with the money situation. The Commanders are, I'm pretty sure it's a $21 million cap hit. I'm pretty sure if I'm not mistaken. But to go into the trade, I think this is very interesting and a bit surprising to say the least. That obviously he was traded for a 5th. Deebo Samuel, I still think has some talent. There's no question about that. The Commanders are getting a guy that I think can do it all. Offensively, he's not just a wide receiver. The dude can run the ball as well. You've seen it with him on the 49ers. He makes plays after the catch, and he could be that versatile weapon that helps a young quarterback like Jaden Daniels. And I think he's in a perfect fit for Washington to bounce back because he's not a number one wide receiver. We know that. He's a number two that I think could be very good there alongside Terry McLaurin. And I think it makes a lot of sense given their offense, is on the rise. With Cliff Kingsbury, I think he can draw up a lot of good plays with Debo involved. And they just
Absolutely.
really needed a consistent second option to Terry McLaurin, given that their options besides, I don't really know their former wide receiver too. It might have been, I don't know. We'll
Like,
pick up on that later. Yeah. But I think Debo brings that dynamic playmaking ability that this team needs, and I think they were missing a little bit last year. After the catch plays, I think that's huge for a team that's looking to improve its offense even more after last year's breakout season for the whole team.
Yeah, you take a look at a team like Washington. Now they have Terry McLaurin and Debo Samuel for Jane Daniels to throw the ball to. They also have a very young tight end, Ben Sinnott. I know a lot of people liked him in the offseason. I was one of those people. He can be very good at the NFL level. He's very young and he is versatile. And he got to learn a year from Zach Ertz. I mean, that's good for a young tight end like Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State. I think that this Washington offense can be even better than they were last year. That's what held them out of the Super Bowl. Well, obviously, their defense gave 48 points to the Eagles, but the Eagles were unstoppable on offense in the playoffs. Like the Washington just needed something to help them compete, and I think this is definitely a good first step. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to go for a Super Bowl this year, but give them 2, maybe 3 years, and they'll be a 14-win football team, in my opinion.
yeah, I definitely think this trade helps them. And even for a fifth round, like if you said this to me, like what in 2021 or yeah,
I
like
would have been pissed.
I would have been real surprised. Like he's worth, and to this day now, like I don't care if he's dealing with like overweight issues, like that can be changed. Like he's still a great versatile player and a great skill player. And trading him for a fifth round pick, like I get the money issues, but like, you got to try to get more for a player like that. Like the 49ers have star power now. Like even Brandon Ayuk wants out, Debo wants out. Their wide receiver core duo is gonna go from Brandon Ayuk and Debo Samuel to Ricky Pearsall and what's his name? Shoot, I forgot his name.
Saving the money to pay Brock Purdy.
Like they just lose people. Like you have the talent. If you're gonna trade the talent, get good picks or at least good talent in return. It's just ridiculous to see people like good players like this get traded for such minimal value.
Right.
I feel like with the 49ers, I feel like it was more they instead of them not liking him as a player, I feel like they just wanted to get rid of his contract. I feel like Washington was the only team that would have been willing to pay all of his contract. I feel like they were talking to teams that were saying, you know what, we'll give you a third, but we can't agree to pay all of his contract. And I feel like that's what the 49ers were looking for clearly with this trade. Just a team that will pay his contract so they don't have to worry about it. Fifth round pick, you very rarely see fifth round picks make NFL rosters. Um, but who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe they could do something with it. I don't know. But yeah.
On the 49ers side of things, I just want to add this. On the 49ers side of things, they just had to make the move. I mean, he's just been up and down in recent years, especially with the injuries and his frustrations with his role. Obviously, we saw the outbursts on the sideline this year. Just the fact that he's been vocal about wanting out and probably signaled to them that it was time for a change. They absorbed a big cap hit, but they get the pick, which can also help them reload at wide receiver elsewhere, maybe in the draft. They're still a contending team, in my opinion. They have other guys to step up in the receiving room, like let's say Ricky Pearsall takes that next step. That's big for them since they don't have to pay him since he's on that rookie contract. Um, but yeah, they made the move with Adam Peters, who was with San Francisco, and I think it could be beneficial for both sides.
Yeah, on San Francisco side, I really like this for Jawan Jennings. I mean, this guy was so
Yeah,
close to being Super Bowl MVP as a receiver just 2 years ago. Now, if they do get rid of Ayuk as well, it'll put him in a role that he hasn't seen before, and I am very excited to see what he can do with that. Ricky Pearsall too, rookie, he could be very decent in the NFL. 400 yards last year, 3 touchdowns. Definitely has potential. He was a first round pick for a reason, obviously. But it's definitely intriguing to see what the 49ers will do with this in the long run. But fifth round pick for Debo Samuel, I'm not sure I get the value. Like you could have probably got more if a team had more to give up. But Washington, great fit for Debo. Washington, in my opinion, winners of this trade.
I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah. Next, we're going to roll in here. We're going to head to our third segment. We're going to talk about the NFL Combine, which is wrapping up tomorrow or Sunday, the day this video will be going up. So far, we've seen all but offensive linemen, and we are going to talk about who we enjoy to see and the impact of people not working out on their draft stock. We'll see you there. Rolling in here to our final segment, we're going to take a look at how the NFL Combine went today and in the past 2 days. But first, before we do that, we're going to talk about some notable players that didn't work out at the Combine. But before we do that, Vince, do you think these players not working out at the Combine can ruin their draft stock in the eyes of scouts?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the player. Let's just say if someone like Shadur Sanders or Cam Ward, they don't work out. I don't think it'll hurt them too much, just given the reason that they played a lot of college football. Teams somewhat already know what they are, and yeah, especially if they have solid tape and teams can see their potential. But for some other prospects like Jalen Milroe and there were Brady Cook, let's say. Like if they were to skip the combine, that could raise some red flags if maybe they're not ready for this moment or something. Especially if they don't have a solid excuse like an injury of some sort. You want to show teams everything you can, but at the end of the day, it's more about how you perform on the field throughout the season. Because if you mess up just a little bit or just fall in the teetering board of what you should be like running at the combine or maybe the vertical jump, you're going to fall off teams' draft boards. Simple as that.
Yeah, I honestly it's 50-50 for me. Like, if you're a star, like if you're a top 5 projected draft pick like Shador or Cam Ward or Abdul Carter, then I really don't see you going to the combine. And honestly, for Abdul Carter, we're gonna talk about this later, but his injury, I don't see why you should risk your injury even more just to what maybe just show scouts that they know who you are. They already know who you are. You don't need to prove anything else really to me. But I honestly these players not working out at the combine. I could see why they don't do it and why they make that choice.
Yeah, I feel like if scouts really like a guy, them not working out the combine is not really going to affect them. These guys still do interviews and they still do pro days. These guys will work out at their pro days, and that's where the scouts get to see them in a closer light and really get to be able to talk to these players one on one in a more effective spotlight maybe than you would at the combine. Just in general, I'm not going to say for these top pristine players, like Atulis was saying, like guys like Will Johnson, guys like Genty, Abdul Carter, Sanders, and Cam Ward, players like that, their draft stock is not going to plummet. Like a guy like Abdul Carter, just because he's not working out the combine, even if he wasn't hurt and he still wasn't working out, I could understand it because he's still, in my opinion, the best overall player in this draft. But yeah, players like this, if they don't work out, oh well. They're gonna do the same thing they would at their pro day. We're gonna take a look here at some of the notable players that we haven't already talked about. Tyler Warren, tight end in Penn State, did not work out. Travis Hunter did not work out, and Mykel Williams, edge from Georgia, did not work out. For these 3 players who have some question marks in the eyes of some NFL fans, does their stock get affected by not working out? Like, let's take a look at Mykel Williams, who's got a couple of question marks in the eyes of fans.
Yeah, so what would those question marks be?
I don't know. I feel like with Mykel Williams, I just haven't heard much about him.
Yeah, honestly, me neither. But hearing the big names like Tyler Warren and Travis Hunter, obviously, I would have loved to see Travis Hunter at the combine working, just because the absolute just complete prospect that he is. But you could definitely see why he didn't, because most teams already know what he is.
Yeah.
And same goes for Tyler Warren too. But Mykel Williams is that's a name that comes up, wondering why he wouldn't, since this is a very let's say deep edge class, and you want to solidify yourself as a number 1. I definitely would have went and beat it, I guess, for the combine.
I don't necessarily think this puts any red flags on Mykel Williams, but like Vince said, this is a deep edge class, and there's many edge rushers who performed well at the combine, like James Pierce, who we're gonna get on to later. But there's a lot of edge rushers in this class, and I think if you're Michael Williams, you need to beat out that competition and show like that you're a star player, that you can be a star player in this draft class, and skipping the combine is just not how you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we head into players we were really impressed by, do we think that Abdul Carter's injury and him needing potential surgery for this can affect his chances of being picked number one by the Titans?
Yeah, I don't think it's that much of a concern as everyone's making it out to be. His talent's undeniable. But I mean, I guess you can make the case if the injury impacts his ability to work out for teams, if he takes like a top 30 visit somewhere, and if the injury lingers into the pre draft process, in this case it would, it could cause some teams to have cold feet, I guess. But nonetheless, he's still a top tier talent, probably the best player in this draft class. I think he can recover and stay in the top spots. But I mean, to some teams, there could be a risk, I guess, if it were to go on past um, the draft process through top 30 visits. But I mean, I think it'll be fine at the end of the day. I think it's like a week to week type of injury.
Yeah, if you're an NFL scout watching this video, don't take his word into too much consideration. I think he really just wants Abdul Carter to fall to Patriots.
Please,
But I
please
don't I
fall.
don't blame him. Abdul Carter is by far the most talented player in this draft, even for his position. Like you very rarely see an edge with this much potential and chance to go number one overall. Sure, Trayvon Walker, but do we think that he was better than Aiden Hutchinson? Absolutely not. I mean, you could have seen a guy like Aiden Hutchinson get picked number one overall. I feel like with Abdul Carter, he's just such a unique prospect in terms of what he brings to the table for an NFL team on day one. So, if you have any thoughts about Abdul Carter's injury affecting his stock?
No, not really. Like Vince said, like both of you said, honestly, he's the best player in this draft class, and in my opinion, it's undeniable. Like the impact he's made the entire season and through the playoffs. Like I don't think this injury, like unless it's like a big deal. Like if it's just a normal, like a small surgery, and he'll be back, like even by like he'll be back by if he's back by like probably like training camp, then like that's perfectly fine. Like it is not a worry to NFL scouts considering how talented he is.
Yeah, I think he's gonna go one regardless of which team. Well, maybe not regardless of which team is there. I think he'll go number one at the end of the day to Tennessee, but that's for another day.
I'm not sure if he goes number one, but I'm definitely saying he's number one prospect in this draft. It really depends on what Tennessee wants to do. If they want Cam Ward, why not pick Cam Ward? If they want Abdul Carter, take Abdul Carter. They have their choice, but in my honest opinion, Abdul Carter, best player in this draft. Lastly, we're going to roll in here. We're going to talk about some of the prospects that really impressed us and also disappointed us during the draft. And I think we'll start with disappointed. I think as a collective group, we were all very disappointed at Tez Johnson today. I mean,
Yeah.
154 pounds and you're running a 4.5 40. That is the slowest 40-yard dash by somebody under 170 pounds since 2003. Vince, how poorly do you think this impacts any stock that he was building?
Yeah, no, he had a great Senior Bowl. He was getting separation. He was um, from scouts. He got some comparisons to Tank Dell. Unfortunately, I think all those comparisons washed away from these scouts after seeing him run a 4.5. And no, a 4.5 is not bad, but at 153 pounds, that's not good. You at 153 pounds, you need to be showing them something different. I'm talking like a 4.3 or something like that, and it just wasn't impressive at all. And I would not be surprised if we don't see his name getting called on draft night at all.
Wow, at all.
Which is unfortunate because I really like Tez Johnson. Maybe he's an undrafted free agent option. Let's say for the Denver Broncos, he played with Bo Nix. Actually, Bo Nix's brother. But yeah, I think today just did not help his case, at all. If anything, it made it 10 times worse than what it was.
Another thing that's so harsh about an event like the Combine is you look at some of these players that are drafted strictly due to the fact they had good combines. You look at a guy like Anthony Richardson. he was a projected second, third round pick. He wasn't even that impressive stat wise and just in general as a quarterback at Florida. He had an amazing combine. Shot up to pick 4 to the Colts, and that's really shown in the NFL. The player that he was in college. You look at a guy like John Ross at the time in the fastest 40-yard dash ever. He shot up draft boards, and what do you do in the NFL? Not much. It's just with the combine, it is a really tough world in the combine. You have a bad showing, it's going to hurt your stock. Tez Johnson, I mean, if you have an impressive enough pro day, why not shoot back up those boards? But yeah, maybe for this the lights were a little bright for him, but I hope for Tez Johnson, because I like Tez Johnson as a player, I hope that he can put a show on at his pro day and gain the respect back that he had by the people. Do we have any more people that we were disappointed by at the combine?
No, not really. But like to add on to like what you said about like the combine, like being misleading, like adding on like Zach Wilson too. Like he was great at the combine, but like look at where he's turned out to now. Like okay, yeah, he was a projected top pick like already before the combine, but like the combine, he was great at the combine, and now look how he turned out. And
Robert
like
Land
about
example too there. I mean, he ran a 4.7 in the draft, and he's highly regarded as one of the best receivers in
and
that
like
draft.
going back to Coach Johnson, like I just don't see like Vince said, this like made his draft stock much worse than it already would be. Like he's small, he's lightweight, he's not that fast as we can tell now, but like what can he do? Like I was talking to my dad about this earlier. Like what can he do? He's not a physical receiver. He's clearly not a fast receiver. I just don't like. I'm honestly gonna agree with the fact what Vince said. He might go undrafted.
Um,
Yeah, and if we're talking about letdown still, okay, I wouldn't really consider it that much of a letdown. But the way he described it, I was kind of getting ready for this. Isaiah Bond said he was going to run, I think it was like a 4.2 or a 4.1,
yeah, it says he's gonna make the record.
something crazy like that. And then he ended up running a 4.41. Yeah, I mean, a 4.41 is still a great time. Um, but I mean, it's
Or his
kind of,
cockiness.
yeah, it's kind of a letdown to some sort of an extent to the way that he was describing it. Um, but does this mean he's gonna fall down the draft board? I don't think so. I think he's always been like a second round prospect.
Another thing to me, at least, that comes to mind when I think of Tez Johnson, I think of Devontae Smith at the combine. He ran a 4.5 as well. I mean, he's a smaller receiver too, but the thing that separates these two for the eyes of the people, Devontae Smith won the Heisman. Tez Johnson was nowhere near the Heisman. With some players, it really does depend on how highly regarded you are going into the combine. I mean, if you're the number, if you are the number
Yeah.
one prospect going into the combine and you have a worse combine performance, you're probably still going to go in the first round. I mean, scouts are obviously going to look at these later round guys and think if they have a poor combine, then they aren't worthy of a pick. But it's just very rough to be a middle of the pack prospect and have a poor combine.
Yeah, even if he was the Heisman Trophy winner, even if he fell past the top 10, so that's how teams regard the scouting combine, which I think is taken out of proportion. Because I mean,
Absolutely.
you're playing football on the field. It's not like you're gonna be doing vertical jumps or whatever they have these people doing, these players doing. I think it's taken out of proportion, and that's shown by players like Anthony Richardson, who I still have a little bit of hope for, and then Zach Wilson, and then you have John Ross, as we said, and the list goes on. So yeah, I think the combine, it's fun. The combine's fun, but I think people, hype it up a little bit way too much on evaluating players.
Yeah, I don't think you're ever going to see the 3 cone drill enacted on an NFL football field. Okay, now we're going to take a look at some prospects that impressed us. Vince, you want to start us off? Who impressed you the most, really, at the combine today?
Yeah, so I got 3 players. I have it's Matthew Golden. He was very impressive today. I think he ran a 4.39.
4.29.
And then you have someone like 4.3. I mean, still that's unbelievable. Then you have someone Omarion Hampton, who scouts have been saying that they have him ranked over Ashton Genty.
And I'm one of those scouts.
Yeah. Which I think is very interesting. I don't agree with it all the way, but I still think Omarion Hampton is a tremendous prospect. And the last guy that I have is, I think, I'm blanking on the first name, but it's Higgins. He was also very impressive.
Jaden
I think
Higgins.
he ran, yes, I think he ran like a 4.47, whatever it was. He's a big dude. So if you run like that, I mean, that's pretty impressive coming for his size. And yeah, I had two receivers on there. Basically because I was on the receivers today. I was watching the receivers, and I was very impressed what I saw in those two guys.
Yeah, what Vince said about Amari and Hampton compared to Genty. Amari and Hampton played bigger competition in the ACC than a guy like Genty did in the Mountain West. That's definitely something the scouts are going to look at. I mean, Hampton played more ranked schools than Genty did. Sure, Genty had a great showing against Oregon, but that was week 2. I mean, that's very early in the season, and preparing for running back like Genty was last year for Oregon was going to be difficult. They didn't really know what to expect. But then you look at what Genty did against Penn State. I'm not one of those people that's going to say that Genty had an awful performance against Penn State. He wasn't great, but I mean, with a school like Penn State, they had probably one of the best run defenses in all college football. It really does depend on with a guy like Ashton Genty is how big are the lights actually going to be for him. Tulith, moving on to you,
Yeah,
who
like
are some prospects that you were impressed by?
I actually have four here. Like Vince said, Matthew Golden running a 4.29. That was great. Like he's gonna be a great speedster receiver. Like 4.29 is a great run. Jackson Dart from Ole Miss, great deep balls today. Looked good. My opinion, he was. I could put him at the number 2 quarterback in this draft, behind Cam Ward and ahead of Shador Sanders. But that's definitely a bold take. I could see Jackson Dart having a better career than Shador
I
Sanders.
think it's a fair take.
I don't think that's ridiculous to say at all.
But yeah, he showed out today. His deep balls were great. That's exactly what I wanted to see out of him. And James Pierce from Tennessee, what a 40 run.
Yeah.
For edge, ran around a 4.4. That's just amazing. Like, coming off the edge, that much explosive. He's an explosive guy. We already, like, I've seen him, like, in top 10s, borderline top 10s of draft boards. An explosive guy with that much speed coming off the edge, that's going to be dangerous in the future. He has a lot of raw talent, and I could see a team definitely picking him maybe on the edge of top 10 or in the top 10 and developing that into great talent. And a surprise I have here is my apologies for if I mispronounce this name. Aishaw Tutin with first he ran a 4.3. I only watched the running back say mainly for the combine, but Tutin ran a 4.38. Nobody was able to beat that for the running back. He ran a second run 4.32. Fastest running back at the combine today. He had the 2 fastest runs on his first and second run. 4.32 is a great for 4.32 is great for a running back. Like all the running backs were great today, but Tutin really stood out to me with the speed today. And I think that like speed kills. Like speed's great. Speed's great.
Somebody
Yeah,
tell
I
it
see
to
what you did there.
Henry Ruggs.
Yeah, with James Pierce. Sorry, but with James Pierce, going into I think it was the college football season. Looking at mock drafts, they had him going number 1 to teams.
They had him where Abdul
And then
Carter is.
Yeah, and then for some reason, he was teetering towards the bottom. Not say the bottom. He was teetering towards like the late first round, early second round, which I really didn't understand. It was a force in Tennessee, and I saw the recent mock of him going to Kansas City at 32, or I think it was 31. Like no, and if that would happen, um, we're screwed basically because James Pierce, I think, can have that effect that someone like Verse has had with the Rams. Um, and I feel like he could bring a lot of versatility to whatever defensive front he joins. And I think he is going to be very, very good.
Yeah, all I'm going to say is Buffalo. If James Pierce is on the board when you pick, don't trade back with Kansas City. If you want him, pick him.
No, trade back with Vegas or whatever team. Just don't let him go to Buffalo.
Okay, I also had 4, but I had the same one as the 2. I also had James Pierce. A 4.47 40-yard dash as a defensive end. For his size, he's 6'5", almost 250. Like, a guy like that running a 4.47, you don't see that very often. That is very special talent, James Pierce. I have a couple friends who love watching Tennessee football, and they are very impressed by him on the field. And you even take a look at College Football 25, the video game. James Pierce is an unstoppable force, and I feel like that really is accurate to how he is in real life. Yeah, James Pierce had a great combine. Another guy that I saw that was really good at the combine, Maxwell Hairston, corner out of Kentucky, ran the fastest 40. He ran a 4.28 at corner, 5'11", 180. Got 31 inch arm reach, which is very good for a corner, and he's running a 4.28. This guy is going to skyrocket up draft boards, and don't be shocked if he's picked early day too. Another guy I saw, I have two guys from the same team. I had Jaden Blue out of Texas. He ran a 4.38 40, and he just looked overall just elusive in general and just really good throughout these drills today.
Crazy. Yeah.
Jaden Blue, very athletic, very productive at Texas. You saw him in the college football playoff, especially against very fierce competition in the SEC. And another Texas guy that I was really impressed by was Quinn Ewers. He looked really good throwing the ball today. He's a guy, he went to Ohio State as a 5-star, one of the most widely regarded prospects, and never really lived up to that hype. And now he just really wants a shot in the NFL, and I think he put on a great show today at the Combine.
Yeah, I think that for sure helped his case. I think his projection could go probably at best maybe second or third round, maybe late second round, early third. But another guy that I wanted to bring up, um, Jalen Noel. He was very impressive today. I forget what he ran as a 40, but I heard it was very good. Great hands, and yeah, I thought he was very impressive. But someone that I'm surprised you never said it to was Gus Hartwig. What happened with Gus Hartwig?
No, future Saint, man, future Saint. Keeping him low on the radar, hoping NFL scouts don't see this and pick up on him.
We're gonna wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for watching episode 3 of the Huddle Up podcast. I'm Hunter, joined by Tulith and Vince. Subscribe to us here on YouTube. Follow all our other social media platforms, which are linked in bio. We have a link tree in bio with direct links to all those as well. And we will see you guys in whatever we're doing next. Goodbye.